Yo, 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 what is up, guys? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer. I'm in a very different location if you don't notice. I actually was just at Game 7 of Philly versus Atlanta in Philadelphia. I've got this shirt on that they handed out at the game. Shout out to the Philadelphia 76ers for giving everyone a shirt and a towel that I left somewhere over there. So I'm in a hotel right now, so I apologize if the audio sounds weird at all or if the lighting sucks. It's not very good, but I did the best I could. I've got like a lamp up here and one of my ring lights over on the side. It's the best I can do right now being out of town, and I'm going to be out of town for about the next week, so I couldn't bring too many things, so this is what I've got. But the game was electric. I first of all want to talk about the atmosphere at the game. I did vlog a lot of that. I'm going to look through the clips. Hopefully there's enough there to put together a pretty good video. It was kind of tough because my phone, as a, professional YouTuber and everything, I had my phone at very low battery going into the arena, so I didn't get a ton of clips, but ultimately I think I got enough that I could make a vlog, so you might see that either tomorrow or the day after, so be on the lookout for that, as well as now a video that the Atlanta Hawks have knocked out the 76ers, a what's next video for the 76ers, and boy, there is a lot to talk about in that video. But I do want to start in this game and talk about, or for this game and talk about the Hawks first. Something that really bothers me sometimes when these big name teams get eliminated, when there's big upsets, is that people really focus on what the team that a lot of people think should have won, the upper seed in the Philadelphia 76ers. A lot of people focus on what that team should have done better as opposed to what the other team did really well in this game. So I want to give the props to the Atlanta Hawks before I talk about the Sixers. And the Hawks deserve a lot of props because Trae Young had a bad game offensively. He was a great playmaker. One of the most amazing things that happened at this game was having the pleasure of watching Trae Young playmake. Trae Young makes passes that I was sitting like way up in the rafters. I was in like nosebleed type seats because every other ticket was like $1,000. So, had to get anything that I could actually pay for. So I was kind of sitting up in the nosebleeds, but I had like a bird's eye view of the court and I was at the game. And yet Trae Young was still making passes that I really didn't even consider when I was up there. His playmaking is just far beyond even what you can tell on TV. He's amazing. And despite the fact that he was so poor shooting in this game, he really showed up in the fourth quarter. And throughout the whole thing, I tweeted this out earlier, every single offensive possession, Trae Young is so dangerous and so good. He makes an impact no matter what is happening. And that's something that a lot of players in today's NBA have problems with. There are some players where if they're not scoring the basketball, they're not making much of an impact. That cannot be said for Trae Young. Trae Young is one of those guys that makes himself better, makes his teammates better, and steps up in the moment when his team needs him most. He did not shoot well. Those are going to happen. Sometimes those nights just happen. So instead, he kind of played the role of his own decoy. He took open shots when he had them, and even if they weren't falling, he continued to take those shots, and it kept the defense honest. Trae Young could have just stopped shooting because he wasn't playing very well, but instead, he stayed as a threat, ultimately making a couple shots down the stretch at the end of this game that really helped the Hawks close this one out. But more importantly, because they have to guard him. He's a great offensive player, and he's been cooking every single defense he's faced over the course of this season. And so they had to stay honest and guard him, and that led to so many open looks for every other player. It forced guys to commit heavily to him. It forced the Sixers to throw double teams at him sometimes, because even if he's not going to shoot the ball, his ability to playmake is so dangerous that you can't leave him unattended. You can't leave him on an island with almost any defender in the league. They had 3 all-defensive caliber players on the floor tonight at a lot of times in this game. Matisse Thybulle, who had a horrible foul towards the end of the game that might have cost the Sixers the whole game, but we'll talk about that in a second. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is the main guy we need to talk about in the Sixers section of this video. But for the Hawks, really the story tonight was Kevin Huerter and Trae Young's playmaking. Kevin Huerter was incredible. Someone said I look like Kevin Huerter. I don't know if I really see that, but if you see it, let me know in the comment section down below. But Kevin Huerter was incredible. He lived up to the Red Mamba nickname tonight. Just an incredible game, 27 points in 40 minutes, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. He was hitting some ridiculous shots. Guys were, credit to the Sixers, they were defending Kevin Huerter amazingly. They were playing some of the best defense you can possibly play on a player, specifically Seth Curry. Seth Curry was putting incredible contests on every single shot that Kevin Huerter took when he was guarding him. And it didn't matter because Kevin Huerter was just drilling everything. It was from like the outset of this game. From the start, Kevin Huerter was locked in and he was shooting the basketball with a confidence that you need to have in a Game 7. Game 7s are hideous and amazing at the same time. This lived up to the Game 7 criteria that you typically see. It's physical, it's disgusting, and you see great performances sometimes from unexpected players. And tonight, that was Kevin Huerter. Trae Young did end up with 21 and 10, and ultimately he was more impactful than that 21 and 10 stat line even says. Like I said, he did not shoot well at all. He was really inefficient in this game, but ultimately he did what his team needed to win. Bogdan Bogdanovic only had 4 points, and Danilo Gallinari stepped up in a big way for them with 17, with some solid defensive possessions here and there. John Collins with 14 and 16, playing his way into, I think, a max contract. I think the Hawks, after making an Eastern Conference Finals run way earlier than pretty much anyone expected them to, and I have to give the Hawks credit, I thought the Sixers had this 1-5. And even after game 1, where the Hawks started blowing them out and ultimately held on at the end, even after game 4, I picked the Sixers the whole way through this series. I thought it was Sixers in 7 going into today's game. And I'm willing to admit I'm wrong. Some people were clowning me for saying Sixers in 7 on Twitter. It's Twitter. It's a prediction. Like, it's a 50-50 shot in the NBA. And the Hawks are a really good team. They are. And so they deserve a ton of credit because I and many others counted them out. Even when they showed me otherwise, I still counted them out. And I owe them an apology. I'm willing to accept that I was wrong. I love it. I've said this on the channel a million times. I love seeing players prove me wrong, and that's what the Hawks did tonight and over the course of this series. They now go into the Eastern Conference Finals against a really tough Milwaukee Bucks team. I don't want to pick against the Hawks necessarily, but the Bucks are going to be a really tough task. They've got to figure out how to stop Giannis. Clint Capella is a good player, but it's going to be really tough for him to stop Giannis, as is for any team in this league. Giannis just had an amazing series against the Brooklyn Nets, so they're going to have to game plan something. But Nate McMillan has been incredible over the course of this year since he picked up at the halfway point in the year. Nate McMillan didn't even start the season with this team, and yet he has led them now as their head coach to the Eastern Conference Finals after being fired by the Pacers after last year's playoff disappointment. Trae Young is going to have to step up in a big way. He's going to have to go against one of the best guard defenders in the NBA in Jrue Holiday. If I've got to pick this series now, I'm probably going with the Bucks, but I'm not making that concrete because the Atlanta Hawks have continued to prove me wrong. I picked them against the Knicks, but I thought they were going to get destroyed by the Sixers, and they won. So, shout to the Atlanta Hawks. On the other side of things, this was not at all how the Sixers envisioned their season ending. Joel Embiid, MVP caliber year. He had a solid game. He needed to be better down the stretch. He ultimately had 31, 11, and 3, which you can't ask for a lot more from a guy playing on a partially torn meniscus, playing 41 minutes in this game. Tobias Harris had 24, 14, and 4. It was a decent game from him too. But ultimately, it was just kind of mental errors down the stretch, and it had a lot to do with Ben Simmons. And I personally think I just watched in real life Ben Simmons' last game as a 76er. This almost felt like a tryout for Ben Simmons over the course of this year. When they brought in Daryl Morey, the first thought for a lot of people was they're going to trade Ben Simmons for James Harden because Ben Simmons doesn't fit a Daryl Morey team. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Daryl Morey teams typically emphasize shooting, 3-and-D caliber guys, and sometimes small ball. They have Joel Embiid, who isn't fitting the small ball criteria, but he can space the floor and he's a great defensive player. So it makes sense that they would keep Joel Embiid. Tobias Harris, over the course of the season, played really well too. He proved that he can still play at an all-star caliber level. He potentially could have been an all-star, but the East is just kind of loaded with talent, as is the NBA as a whole right now, so he was left off that list, and he had a good game playing 45 minutes tonight. But Ben Simmons doesn't fit the criteria. He can't shoot, and he won't even look to shoot. I really thought with Daryl Morey coming in and Doc Rivers coming in, just all around new front office, new head coach, that Ben Simmons was going to transform this season. And over the course of the years, I have been a defender of the Ben Simmons-Joel Embiid pairing because I thought they could get it done. I expected at some point Ben Simmons is going to develop, and I thought he really didn't need to necessarily be a great three-point shooter for them to succeed. And I still don't think he has to be a great offensive threat for them to succeed, but he's got to be at least an offensive threat. He's not a threat at all. They were guarding him with Danilo Gallinari all night, and credit to Gallo, Thunder legend, but he's not a good defender. He's not. Ben Simmons is like 6'11", way stronger than Gallo. He should be able to push Gallo out of the way and at least attack the basket sometimes so that he can kick out to shooters. But Ben Simmons would dribble the ball up every time, and he wouldn't even look at the basket. There was one play in this game where Ben Simmons had a wide open dunk under the basket, and he dished it off to Matisse Thybulle, who got fouled, made one of 2 free throws. But Ben Simmons had a wide open dunk. He didn't even look. He dribbled once and immediately looked to pass the ball out. He's not even looking to see if he can shoot the ball. Not one time tonight did it feel like Ben Simmons was looking to shoot. The only time he really shot was like a couple hook shots and maybe a layup attempt. I think he shot 4 times tonight, and I don't think a single one of those was in the fourth quarter. Ben Simmons has to shoot the ball. He doesn't have to necessarily shoot threes at a great clip, but he has to be a threat on the offensive end in some way. He would dribble the ball up, give it to someone else, and stay up on the perimeter to grab the ball and play make if they needed him to. Credit to him. He was great playmaking tonight with 13 assists, and he had some good defense, but they need more. And that's why I think Ben Simmons is gone. I think tonight was Ben Simmons' last game as a 76er. Does that mean that the process is over? No, I don't think so. I think the process is Joel Embiid. I think it's the Joel Embiid era is what the process refers to. But I think right now, Daryl Morey is going to do all he can to look for a Ben Simmons trade. What does that trade look like? I'm not sure. I'll probably tweet something out about that, asking y'all what trades you could draw up for Ben Simmons, what teams would look for him. I think really the market for him is going to be much thinner than it would have been earlier in the year. But I think there is still a market. Ben Simmons is still a good player. He's still young. He's just not at all a threat on the offensive end of the ball. He's a defensive player of the year caliber guy, a great playmaker, a great rebounder, but ultimately I think he has to be a point forward going forward. I don't think he can be a point guard. I just don't, unless he finds some way to shoot. He needs to get in the gym and work on this because it's been years. He has had time and time and time. He's had time. He's had so much time to become a threat, and he just hasn't at all. There was a clip going around the other day of Ben Simmons shooting pull-up jumpers in the mid-range in the Summer League. What happened? I really think it's mental. At this point in the series, I think it was mental. And not only that, but he had the worst shooting percentage from the free throw line in NBA playoff history with his number of attempts. No one has ever shot that bad. It's got to be better. He's got to be. And I ultimately don't think it's going to be on the 76ers. So those are my thoughts on this game. Once again, the atmosphere was electric in this arena. I've been to the Wells Fargo Center, the Sixers arena, a couple times, but there was nothing like this. This was amazing. Shout to Philly for having me, and shout to the Sixers fans that I met at the game. Y'all were great. And once again, shout to the Hawks. Looking forward to the Eastern Conference Finals. On the other side of the bracket in the Western Conference Finals, we had Game 1 today. It's kind of crazy that we had a Game 1 today while this series was still going on. That's just the way the NBA works. But we saw the Clippers and the Suns face off in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, and if this game told me anything, it's that this has the potential to be a classic. We saw stars going at each other. We saw big, highlight type plays. We saw role players playing great basketball. I want to give a specific shout out to Devin Booker and Paul George. Those two guys were amazing. Paul George has completely shedded the pandemic P, whatever you want to call him nickname, playoff P jokingly. This is now the real thing. Paul George has stepped up in such a big way for this Clippers team. The Suns didn't have Chris Paul. The Clippers didn't have Kawhi Leonard. So all in all, it was somewhat fair game. If you want to talk about in terms of they both missed one big star. And these two guys, both Devin Booker and Paul George, stepped up tremendously. Two guys who have received a lot of slander in the past. Paul George for his lackluster playoff performances at times, and Devin Booker for his inability to make the playoffs and what a lot of people called empty stats. And him, alongside with a guy like Trae Young, are proving the empty stats narrative sucks. It's not empty stats if a guy doesn't have a lot of help. And ultimately, right now, Devin Booker is elevating his team. I may be even willing to say that right now, Devin Booker is the best player on the Suns over Chris Paul. And I'm a massive Chris Paul fan. He's one of my top 3 favorite players in the NBA right now. Love the guy. But ultimately, this is Devin Booker's team. Devin Booker has taken over time and time again, and he has proven that he's an assassin. DeAndre Ayton had a great game as well. Jay Crowder had a solid game with 13. Mikal Bridges with 14. Campaign Thunder Legend with 11 and 9. Cam Johnson had a great game with 12 too. A guy who a lot of people were mad at the Suns for picking at that point in the draft, and he continues to prove people wrong. This Suns team is just so well built, and it's very deserving that before this game where the Suns showed how well built they are, James Jones got the Executive of the Year award, and I couldn't be happier for the guy. I think he does deserve it. I personally picked Sean Marks just because of the Harden trade, but ultimately, I'm very happy that James Jones got it. I think he deserves the award, and I think this is going to be a classic series. I hope Kawhi Leonard and Chris Paul are both able to return because I do want to see these teams go at it fully healthy. But ultimately, I'm not sure how quickly they will be back, if they will be back at all. And for right now, I guess that's okay, because this was an amazing game. DeMarcus Cousins had a crazy stretch in this game where he started bodying guys. But ultimately, the Clippers just didn't have the personnel to match up. It was a really well-coached game from Monty Williams, who, in my opinion, was the coach of the year. He was my pick for the award. And the Suns continue to roll. The Suns are now 3 games away from the Western Conference Finals. Chris Paul is 3 games away from making his first Western Conference Finals, and in their first playoff run ever, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, all 3 games away from the NBA Finals. And right now, what this game told me is that if I had to pick a team right now to win the NBA Finals, I'm going with the Phoenix Suns. I think this is the Suns' year. We'll see if I'm wrong on that. Both the teams I picked to make the finals, and the Lakers and the Sixers, are now out of the playoffs. So at this point, I'm just excited. I'm super happy to see these new teams and new faces getting a shot to win a ring. I love basketball. Playoff basketball has been great so far. Tomorrow, there are no games, which both sucks. But at the same time, I think the basketball world needs a breather, not only after these couple days of playoff basketball, but after yesterday, or the day before yesterday, where there was just so much going on in the NBA with all these rumors. The Kemba Walker trade happened just a few days ago. Coaching carousel stuff, Rick Carlisle not being the coach, Maverick stuff falling apart. A million different things happen in the NBA. So let's take a break. So you won't see an After the Buzzer video tomorrow because there won't be any games for me to talk about, but you probably will see a video, whether that's the vlog or whether that comes in a couple of days, or it might be one of the What's Next videos, whether it's about the Sixers, the Nets, and I think I also have the Wizards video recorded. Still got to get out the Mavericks and Grizzlies videos. Those will be coming soon as well, probably about in the next week. If you made it to this point in the video, let's drop in either D-Book or an ice tray in the comment section below to show me you made it this far. Shout out the Hawks and shout out the Suns for winning these games. I appreciate you guys watching. I will see you guys later. Real one, say it back.